Today we're going to focus on function notation. And function notation is basically the same thing as y equals mx plus b. It just looks different, and I'll show you how it looks now. So here we have y equals mx plus b, and that's the standard way we've been dealing with things for a while. But you can write in function form, and again, this is going to show up on things like the SATs and maybe map testing, something like that, where the function form is this. This is the same as, it just has this extra part in here, which you can basically substitute y for. Just a new format. The way it is actually read is the symbol f of x, or f and then x in parentheses, is another name for y, and it is read the value of f at x, or the value of f of x. Okay. So it's asking you for the value of the function when x has a certain value. It's easier to understand just by doing it than actually listening to me. So in this here, what I would do is I'd say the function's value is going to be when x is -2. I'm going to substitute in -2 times -2 minus 7. So it's going to be 4 minus 7. So this function's value is -3. But the way I indicate that the function's value is -3 when x is -2 is to write it this way. Function's value when x is -2 is equal to -3. And like I said, it's just a different way of writing it. So let's do this next one. Same thing here. F of x is equal to 0.3x minus 1.2. And I'm looking for the function's value when x is equal to 7. So the way I'm going to write this is the function's value when x is 7 is equal to 0.3 times 7 minus 1.2. 0.3 times 7 is going to be 2.1 minus 1.2. So the final answer is that is going to be 0.9. So f of 7 is equal to 0.9. Again, what that means is the function's value when x is 7 is 0.9. The same thing is going to happen with this one here. It says here g of x. G of x is just another way of saying f of x, which is another way of saying y. G of x is equal to -2/5 x plus 1/10. And we're looking for the value of the function when x is equal to 4. So we're going to substitute in here -2/5 times 4 plus 1/10. So it's going to be when I do that, it's going to be -8/5 plus 1/10. If I find a common denominator, it's going to be -16/10 plus 1/10. So it's going to equal -15/10, because -16/10 plus 1/10 is -15/10. That's going to simplify to -3/2, so -1.5. So the way of writing this out would be g when the function g is equal to the x value is 4, the value of the function is going to be -3/2. I know it seems confusing just because of the way it looks, but really we're just plugging in x and solving for y. It just looks a little bit funky because of the way it's written. So in these types of problems, it's a little bit different. It says here, for the function f of x is equal to -3x plus 2, find the value of x. So now we're trying to find x instead of being given x, so that f of x is equal to negative 13. So if f of x is equal to negative 13, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that right where that goes. So now I'm going to solve for x. And subtract 2 from both sides, and negative 15 is equal to negative 3x. And so that's going to be equal to, let's see here, x is going to equal to 5. So the answer is x is equal to 5. When x is equal to 5, then the value of the function is negative 3. So I'm going to try this one, then you can try the next one. So in this case here, g of x is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 3 when the function's value is 4. So it says, so that the function has a given value. Find the value of x. So we're looking for x. So that means it's going to be this way. Which then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. 7 is equal to 1/2 x. Multiply both sides by negative 2, or negative 2 over 1 to get rid of that. Or just divide by negative 1/2, same thing. So I end up with negative 14 is equal to x. So x, when x is equal to negative 14, the value of the function is going to be 4. And I can always substitute it back in there and see if that works. Negative 14 divided by, or negative 1/2 times negative 14 is going to be, let's see, it's going to be it's going to be positive 7. 7 minus 3 is equal to 4, so that works. So you should try this one yourself, and then I'll do it. So pause here. So on this one here, the answer is going to be x is equal to negative 2. If x is equal to negative 2, then the value of the function is negative 13, which I can see again if I plug it in here. That is going to be negative 10 minus 3 is going to be negative 13, so it works. So a family of functions is a group of functions that have similar characteristics. The most basic linear function in the family of all linear functions is called the parent linear function. And it says here, the parent linear function has the following form: f of x is equal to x, which is essentially the same thing as the most simple line we've got, which is y is equal to x. I'm going to graph that for you now, because remember, when y is equal to x, that means when x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 2. When x is 0, y is 0. So here's what that's going to look like. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So it's asking now, graph the following. Graph each function and compare the value of the graph with the graph of f of x. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take this one right here. I'm going to come up with an xy chart. I'm going to put that right here. So my x, when x is 0, y is negative 2. So that's going to go right there. When x is 1, y is negative 1. That's going to go there. And when x is 2, y is 0. It's going to go right there. So I'm going to draw a line, connect those dots. Here we go. There we go with a nice straight line. And if I were to compare the graph, it looks like they're parallel lines, and one is just, the blue one is 2 below the one that is the red one. That's the parent linear function, the most basic line we've got. So now I'm going to do this with this bottom one as well. And that one there, we're going to go ahead and still figure out with the xy chart. When x is 0, y is 0. So that's going to be a point. When x is, I'm going to choose 3, because it'll be easier to graph. Y is 1, so 3 over 1 right there. When x is 6, y is going to be 2. 1, 2, 3, and then 2 right there. So my line is going to look like this. And the way I would describe that compared to the red line is it has the same y-intercept, but the slope goes down. It goes up less quickly than the red one does. So its slope is shallower than the one that's red. So that's how you can compare lines based on that. And that red line is the most basic line we've got, and that's really important to remember because it's the one that everything's compared to. So in this problem here, it says our state park charges $5 per car as an entrance fee. The amount collected is given by the function f of x is equal to 5x. The park recently restructured its fee and now charges $10 per car. The function for the new fee is g of x is equal to 10x. Graph both functions. How is the graph of g related to the graph of f? So I'm just going to again do this with the values here. So I'm going to graph this one in red. So x and y, when x is 0, y is 0. When x is 1, y is 5. When x is 2, y is 10, and so on. I'm going to make this easier. When x is, let's say here, when x is 8, y is going to be 40. So if I graph these, when x is 1, y is 5. When x is 2, y is 10. When x is 8, y is going to be 40, which is be right about there. Then if I graph those, what it will look like is this. So that's how that one would work. Now we're going to graph the other one in blue. So here I'd add a couple more blue lines on there, or blue levels on there, just so I could graph it correctly. So in this case here, when x is 0, y is 0 again. When x is 1, y is 10. When x is 2, y is 20. And when x is 8, y is going to be 80 all the way up here. So if I draw a nice line, it'll look like this. And what you can see is that the slope is twice as high, or twice as steep for the blue line versus the red line. It goes up much more quickly. That makes sense because it's double the price. So the main takeaway on this is that this here, if we have something that looks like this, that's the same as this here. And you just have to be careful on the language of if you're solving, if it says that you're solving for x, then you're probably being given this. If it's you're figuring out the function's value, then you're being given x and figuring out the value of this part here when you plug in x. So that's the most complicated part. Just really practice it. I think you'll get it as we get more comfortable with it and practice it a little bit more.